Hi, and welcome to Sidewalk Talk. I'm Steve Fortunato, founder of Shovel the Sidewalk. We're a marketing firm in Buffalo, New York. We work with small businesses, help them build their brand, create their advertising. We utilize authentic storytelling. It's something we believe in, and we know that's how people connect with people. That's why we have this podcast called Sidewalk Talk, an opportunity for thought leaders in our community here in Western New York to share their stories and hopefully connect with others. And today we have Nicholle Overkamp. She's the founder and CEO of Wilcox Financial Group, Buffalo native, Williamsville South. Now is an author. We'll get to your book in a little bit. You have a couple of companies going. She's obviously a businesswoman. She has which is interesting to me, a bachelor's in psychology. Then you achieved retirement plan. You're a retirement planning specialist. You received that designation from the Wharton School, correct?
I did.
That's impressive. An MBA with concentration in finance. But you're also a very strong advocate for empowering women. You have a niche as far as marketing. We'll get to that too. What I want to start with is your I don't know, is your passion for money? Is it your what is it? What got you into this industry?
Well, it actually stemmed from wanting to help people. And so I have a background in psychology. One of my first internships was dealing with a eating disorder clinic, and I thought I wanted to be a family social worker and attorney. Oh. And so that was my first internship, and I had a few others, and what I realized was, I wanted to help people, but I was not passionate about the MSW side of things and how emotional it got. But what I really enjoyed was actually running the business office and doing the finances for one of the internships that I had. And at that same time, I was also working part-time for a financial advisor. And so when I got my acceptance letter from UB for the MSW JD program, I had this midlife crisis at like 20.
A little early.
Exactly. And so long story short, the advisor that I was working for at the time, he said, you know, Nicholle, everything that you're telling me you enjoy doing is probably a good fit for this industry. So why don't you consider it? And so I did. I took about 2 sleeps and decided I'm going to give it a whirl. You know, it sounded really intriguing to me, and so I got licensed and finished my MBA. Actually, ended up doing that instead within that same year. So
it's not you grew up saying it's financial world is somewhere I want to be. It's not you never thought of it until you happen to bump into it.
Exactly. So. It was almost accidental. You know, when I was a little girl, I definitely wasn't dreaming about being a financial advisor, nor did I even know it was an option, quite frankly. So
that's an interesting point. Why do you think you didn't know it was an option?
Well, I think because I didn't grow up around money. My family didn't have a lot of it, and my parents never worked with a financial advisor. And so I actually grew up, it was just my mom and my sister, and she was a single mom, and we did our best. And so there was never an ability to know that there was something different available or help available or a better way, really. It was really just, getting by and doing the best we could.
So there's financial planners and there's financial planners. So some people think of financial planners, some of them as like the used car salesman kind of thing, right? And there's a lot of good used car salesmen out there, right?
Sure.
And there's a lot of good financial planners, but there could be others that have hurt the reputation for people in the industry. What makes you different? One of the things that you had talked to before we went on air is about being fee-based. I would assume that separates you quite a bit. Talk about fee-based and what separates you and doesn't make you one of the ones we think about.
Absolutely, yeah. And you know, our industry is so unique because their financial advisor can mean so many different things, be it a product sales guy or a licensed advisor, and everyone unfortunately uses the same term. And so one of our biggest hurdles in starting out was the education part in who we were marketing to, that, hey, you know what, if you sit down with us, we're going to help you. We're not going to just sell you a product. And interestingly enough, I had somebody come into my office for a meeting this Saturday, and he said, you know, I know this is probably just a pitch for life insurance, but I really need help getting out of debt. And I said, well, that's interesting, you know, tell me more. And long story short, every time he tried to get financial help, the advisors he had met with in the past were really just trying to sell a product. And so I explained to him how we work, and what we do is we charge a fee to put together a plan, to put together a real financial plan for a client. And what that means, because I think that term is confusing in itself, is creating a pathway for you to reach all of your goals. Right? And so when you think about life and you have the YOLO side of things, where on one end of the spectrum, you think you could die tomorrow and you just want to have a lot of fun and spend the money you have, but the other side of your brain might be thinking, wow, I really want to make my future self proud. So that in between really should be the financial plan, and coming up with that series of compromises to make smart, educated decisions. Also understanding and being educated on like the why behind it, so that you can be constantly motivated and empowered to make wise financial decisions. And so that's really part of the process. And it doesn't matter how much you make, how old you are, where you are in your career. It's important for everyone. It's just going to be at a different scale.
So I just read recently, you know, I think it was a third of Americans might be more than that, don't even have anything for retirement or a plan for retirement. And we're living longer now. Do you think we're headed for a major crisis 20, 30, 40 years from now?
Well, that's possible. I mean, it's definitely a real concern where so many Americans just don't realize how much it takes to be able to retire well or maintain a standard of living. And part of that problem is people don't even know what they're spending, right? They think they have a good idea of what's coming in and going out, but there's so much gray for many people that they're anticipating a retirement on an income that may not actually be accurate to what they're accustomed to. And so when you flip the switch from earning and always being able to make more to no longer able to earn, it's really difficult. And a lot of people also are in that bucket of a little bit delusional. And they think, well, I'll just work forever, or I'll work until I'm 70. And the problem with that is, what if you can't? What if your body says otherwise? Or what if your employer determines something different for you? And so it's really about, you know, the more educated you are and the better you're able to plan, you're really just setting yourself up for more freedom. So if you want to work until you're 70, that's great, but at least if you have a plan standing behind it, you may have the option not to.
So what would, I know, I realize you custom build every plan for every person, but someone that wants to work till they're 70, what would a plan do? I get it, if they get sick when they're 60, they may not be able to work till they're 70. If you get sick when you're 40, you might not be able to work till 70. But what is it, what are the strategies that can be implemented to have the in case you can't do what you want to do? So I always talk about this in business. You have to have a strategy, and part of your strategy has to be, you have to be able to pivot away from that strategy.
That's right.
But how does that happen in your world?
So for us, it is first and foremost, it's cash flow management and understanding how much you're spending and what you're spending and being intentional about that. So, I always want people to think about, what is it that you're spending your money on, and does it all bring you joy, and is it intentional? Or is it spending without thinking too hard, right? And there's that category where a lot of us are inclined to spend and do it because it's convenient, or it's impulse, or it's just not well thought out and everybody else is doing it. So that's the first part. And then after you get a good handle on that, it's thinking about how much can you actually save and set aside in different buckets of money, be it short-term and long-term, so that if life happens and you can't continue to work, or maybe you're out of work for a couple of years, you've got that emergency reserve set aside.
Gotcha.
Additionally, we talk about insurance, and that is, some people hate talking about it, or they tend to get a little squeamish, but if you think about it, it's really such an important part of a financial plan, because life happens and we can't always plan for life, but we can certainly be prepared for what may come about. And if you think about it, we insure and spend money on so many things, whether it's our cell phone, we buy car mats for our floor, but we typically don't want to think about, well, what if we should insure like ourselves, our life, or our income? And so that's a big part of the discussion, is saying, hey, if you can't work tomorrow and you're out of work for 5 years, can you afford to live without a paycheck? Maybe you should consider disability income insurance. Or worse, even if you die tomorrow, are there people that you love depending on you? So it's definitely part of the discussion in putting together a financial plan so that you are prepared, but more importantly, being educated on the options with insurance and understanding the different types that are out there, the different carriers that are available. It's such a complicated and complex world in regard to financial products. So the best that you can do is get educated and then make a decision that you feel confident about, so that you know you're prepared.
When it comes to life, the first thing people think about, I'm assuming they think life insurance, not necessarily disability insurance,
right.
Income, short-term, long-term. There's long-term health care, or what's that called?
Long-term care insurance?
Long-term care insurance, and I do want to touch on that. But when it comes to life insurance, there's those that say life insurance is for life insurance. It's a 30-year term, and it's if you die young, it's so you can take care of those that you love.
Right.
It's not an investment tool. Then there's others that say it's an investment tool. What do you say?
It depends. It certainly should not be first and foremost looked at as an investment tool. Life insurance should be purchased because you need protection and life insurance, meaning if you die, you want somebody to get a income tax-free benefit. Okay. However, there are term insurance policies which are cheap. They last for a period of time, and they're a great fit for young families that don't have the budget for permanent insurance, where you can obtain a big death benefit. The con to that is that some people want life insurance to last as long as they do, and that may be beyond a 20 or 30-year term. Or there are some families that want to use it as a wealth transfer mechanism, where it's guaranteed to last forever and it's going to pass down wealth to another generation or pay for final expenses. We're all going to die at some point. So people want that to be set aside and guaranteed. In addition, there's some individuals, and like myself, where I have permanent insurance, not as a wealth transfer tool because I don't have children, but because my husband and I decided to give a lot to a couple of nonprofits that we feel that are very important and really helped us quite a bit in the past. And so we feel the need and obligation to give back. So that's our strategy. And to your question about investment, some permanent policies do have a cash value, and it can be used later on in life if it's designed correctly and you understand the details. It can be advantageous and have some flexibility, but it's certainly very different than an actual investment product.
Why? So, and what about the long-term policy?
Long-term.
This is for, your work. I remember my mom and dad. My dad qualified. He ended up passing away young, but my mom didn't qualify. Could have used it.
Yep.
Explain that insurance and why it's so important and what it can do. What can happen if you don't have it?
Sure. So long-term care insurance is designed to pay for the things that medical insurance does not. So that is going to be your at-home care, qualified skilled nursing, assisted living, nursing home care, or adult daycare. And many people will sometimes assume, oh, I have Medicare, it'll cover it, and it doesn't. And the long-term care insurance is really great for that donut hole of most middle-class families, where we don't necessarily save or accumulate enough wealth to afford retirement and private paying for long-term care, which on average, you're looking at 80 grand a year right now for nursing home care, maybe assisted living, $6,000 a month. It's hard to pay for both. And so long-term care insurance will cover that cost. And for many middle-class families, they've done a great job saving, so it won't be easy for them to qualify for Medicaid either, right? So
that's the 5-year look back, that whole thing, and that's
right.
part of the planning and the strategy.
It's part of the planning and the strategy, and there's truly, what I say to clients is there's no right or wrong in regard to long-term care insurance. It's really a matter of choosing the path you want to take. Right. So there's the let's have insurance and be covered, or some is better than none concept, right? Where we're going to fill this need, or let's hope it doesn't happen. And if it does, we know that we're going to be up against having to outlay that cash flow and it could impact my spouse and his or her lifestyle. Or I want to plan for Medicaid and I don't really care so much about what happens because I want to leave everything to my kids, But what I think people don't understand is Medicaid planning can be placed on this better than what it really is pedestal. And it's just important that if you're going to go that route, to truly understand what that means to Medicaid qualify, what options you have available for you, or to you rather, on Medicaid, because they aren't plentiful like private pay options. And then, what if you have a spouse, what are their limitations then going to be? So, and the more education you have around that, in putting yourself there, even though sometimes human nature is to force those thoughts out of your head because they're emotional, they force you to be vulnerable, and it's something that you don't want to think about necessarily, but I can't tell you how important it is, and especially if you have kids, to, most people don't want to be a burden on their children, and so having those conversations well in advance as a family conversation is really critical in your overall financial health.
Obviously, the longer you wait, I'm assuming the more expensive long-term care insurance would be. So
that's right.
When should someone, again, different for everybody, I understand, but when should someone get serious about purchasing it?
Well, for women, we tend to have them look into it a little bit sooner. And the reason being is just the cost. It's actually more expensive now for women to get long-term care insurance than men. Why? Because we live longer.
Oh, gotcha.
And we're more likely statistically, or so the insurance companies say, to utilize it. And so it is definitely circumstantial. Every year you get older, it does get more expensive, and it's hard to get, actually. Long-term care insurance is truly much more difficult to get underwritten for than life insurance or disability income insurance. So depending on the circumstances and depending on your ability to pay and things like that, we are really looking at anywhere between 45 and 55, that range in terms of when we're starting to look at, hey, is it appropriate? Does this fit into your overall plan? And should we start considering it?
You mentioned it's more expensive for women. You specialize in that. You focus on. You wrote a book. I've known you for 18 minutes. I'm uncomfortable saying the name of the book, so I don't want to disrespect.
Money B.
Yeah, Money B.
Asterisk ITCH.
So you co-authored this with Sarah Blankenship.
I did.
Tell me. I mean, it's really cool. So. It's awesome. You can get it at Amazon anytime. Can you see that? There you go. For those watching on YouTube. So tell me about it. Tell me why it's a no BS guide for smart women who want to own their financial future. Marketing wise, I love it. I love you've gone to this niche because we want to be everything to everybody.
Right.
And people want to work with people that specialize. All right, so but what take me there? Why did you write the book? How did that start? What are you thinking, and why are you focusing on, besides the marketing purpose, but why you obviously have a passion for empowering women. So take me through this.
Well, I think that there's so many different components to that, right? Where when it comes to women, we are not always inclined to take care of ourselves first. Okay. And second, there's not a lot available out there. There hasn't been in the past of firms that cater specifically to women, to their needs, to how their mindset works, in a place where you can show up and feel like you're not going to get judged. You can show up and talk about the stress and the emotions of maybe having to go through fertility treatments, which, by the way, cost thousands of dollars, and you have to plan for that. And then getting the right education. And so over the years, I kept hearing the same thing over and over again. It was well, I don't even know the questions to ask, or I don't know who to go to, or I feel uncomfortable, or I'm embarrassed. I feel this feeling of shame that I'm really successful, or I've gotten this far, but my money situation isn't where it should be. And so, after you hear, or my husband takes care of it, that to me is like nails on a chalkboard. And so I wanted to create an environment that could be comfortable, but make a huge impact. And the thought process behind the book was, how can we appeal to more women and on a broader platform and encourage them to take action? And so with the book, we broke down all the different components of financial planning, and every chapter is a different part that we felt was really important. So in the first 2 chapters actually don't really pertain to financial planning specifically at all. The first chapter is asking for help doesn't mean you're helpless. And the second chapter is you're not a bitch for saying no. Because quite frankly, so many women don't take action because they are either afraid to ask for help, or they don't know where to go, or they don't take the time out of their day to think about the future. Life it goes by in a blink, and often we're doing for everybody else, or the day-to-day minutia in the grind of our lives, and we forget that, hey, there's people out there that can help and want to in fact help. I just need to raise my hand. And then the other part is setting healthy boundaries and money limits. And so those first 2 chapters are really talking about psyche, mindset, and putting yourself in the right headspace to actually then put together a financial plan that you don't think about just once, but that you are forming new disciplines for consistency, so that you can get results long-term, forever, versus just a short-term fix. And so the other chapters are going to break down from spending and budgeting, life insurance, disability insurance, planning for retirement, and all of those things in between, through really fun stories. So we wanted to tell it in a way where we want women to read this book and say, oh my gosh, me too, or I'm not the only one, or I didn't think of that. And the hope is, after reading the book, that they're inspired or empowered to just do something for themselves, even if it's one little thing to take action on, to put them into a better space.
You mentioned what nails on the chalkboard for you is, my husband will do that. I think that, I don't know the statistic, but I would assume a lot of trouble in marriages are financial. We all know that.
Right.
And a lot of that comes back to communicating, or not communicating, which brings into problems. I would assume then, making an assumption because we haven't talked about it, but you probably deal with couples then? Do you work with couples?
We do.
Do you, I mean, I'm going to go for my personal. My wife, when I say, we got to discuss whatever, especially if it's insurance, talking about when I'm dead, she doesn't want to hear it.
Yep.
Doesn't want to, I know it needs to be taken care of, you take care of it. And I try to bring her into that picture so she has an understanding. Yeah. If I get hit by a truck here, this is here, this is here, this is, you need to know where everything is. I'm assuming I'm not alone. And that's a pretty common thing. Yeah. So what do you do in those situations when maybe couples just aren't, how do you improve couples' communication so they don't run into trouble
down the road?
Right.
We force it. We have this knack for making people really uncomfortable.
It's fun.
It's actually, a chapter in the book is couples and money, because you're right. It's one of the number one reasons people split is because of money problems. And so, I was kind of joking, but not really, when I say I make couples uncomfortable, is if you come to us and you're married, most likely I'm going to force the two of you to come together. And it doesn't mean that you have to immediately have joint accounts or that you need to change your rules necessarily, right? If one person's paying the bills, that's okay. You can have yours, mine, and ours accounts. There's nothing wrong with that. But what we force upon and being critical about is that you are on the same page about your goals and you talk about them. Because the last thing you want to do as a couple is 10 years from now say, oh, we forgot to talk about that. I want this and he or she wants that, and they're two completely different things. And maybe that's a time when your kids are grown and out of the house, your distractions are gone. And now you're rebuilding not only your future and your lives together because you never talked about it, you want different things. And so we see that happens a lot for people that kind of kick the can down the road or they don't bring it up. And so the most important thing that you can do for your relationship, if you can before you get married or early on, is just spell it out. What do we want for each other? What do I want for myself? Because at the end of the day, you're two different people. You don't have to want all the same goals. But what are the compromises that we can put in place to make sure that you guys are going to be able to achieve them and work as a team? When you're married, you are a team, and you should utilize each other's strengths and weaknesses as such to make sure that you're on track for retirement, to make sure that if one of you can't go to work, you're prepared for that, or you're okay with all of the things that you each want together and then individually as well for now and the future. And then it makes you, it forces you to have better conversations, make better decisions, and it takes away a lot of that uncertainty in regard to even questions as simple as, hey, you know what, we want to move. Should we move into a house that the bank says we can afford, or a house that affords our lifestyle in what we actually want to do day to day? So
I would assume you run into a lot of, we got to keep up with the Joneses. That's always a problem.
It is.
Yes, and for couples too.
And it's worse nowadays than it used to be because of social media, right? So it's constantly in front of you in terms of what everybody else is doing, and whether you want to admit it or not, there's probably moments throughout your day where you're like, ugh, I want to be doing what she's doing, or why does she make it look so easy, and why am I grinding it out, and the one rule that I set with clients is, look, like if we're going to work together, you have to promise me you're not going to compare yourself to anybody else. I'm such an advocate that comparison is the thief of joy, and it really sets you back, and someone else's financial life isn't relevant to yours. And the only thing that you should worry about is what's best for you, your family, and what you want out of life, not someone else. Because what social media doesn't show you, or at the surface level of anybody's life, is what's underneath it. What kind of debt they have, or how planned they are, or unprepared for that matter. You just don't know. And so the best thing that you can do in regard to that and keeping up the Joneses is to actually just not pay attention, right? Not pay attention to anybody else but you, and really staying on track. And that can help quite a bit.
Great advice. Great advice. I've got it like 30 seconds, 45 seconds. I hate when people do that. You got 30 seconds to answer something. But you're in a, when people think of financial planners, I think they generally think that it's a man's world. And you're breaking through. And you're also a business owner too. How difficult has it been? I'm going to tell you, I think it's great because I think it's going to help grow your business. Whatever people. I think men trust women more than they trust men, and I bet you women trust women more than they trust men. You have a natural, people are going to trust you. So, but what is it, how difficult has it been for you? What has been in the way? And how have you broken through to help other women that might be thinking of doing the same thing?
Yeah, well, it hasn't been easy. And Sarah and I joke all the time, like we're so used to being, we'll walk into a room and it's all men, and the first question is, who do you work for? Yeah. Who do you work for? And we're us, we're it. Leave it, take it or leave it. And or when I go to events with my spouse, everybody assumes he's the financial advisor, which is hilarious because he's, by nature a mechanic. So, it hasn't been easy, and I haven't had a mentor until actually very recently in the industry. And what I did though is I hired an outside coach and an outside mentor who I sought out, and I read a lot of books because I knew it didn't have to be as hard as the people around me were making it out to be. But I'm a slow learner, I suppose, and it took me quite a bit of time to have the confidence to ask for help and to seek assistance outside of where I started it in a big company. And I think for other women out there, and more women are actually getting into the industry now, which is really refreshing to see, is to know that it doesn't have to be a man's world, and to not do it like the men do it. That was one of the first mistakes that I made, is I looked at all of my male colleagues and I thought I had to be like them. I thought I had to do what they did to be successful, and the truth of the matter is you don't. You know, again, it took me a while to figure it out, but what I realized was I can be successful in this career and do what I want to do and do what lights me up. And I can't tell you the number of times I was told it's not going to work, or somebody told me, I can't believe you're working with just women. Don't you want to make money? It's really disappointing, but they said, well, you can't do that, or it's not going to work, or you'll really struggle. And I didn't listen to them. And that was the best thing that I did for my career. And then, of course, Sarah and I going after this together was really saying, look, like, we're going to be different, and we're going to do what we feel is most important. And at the end of the day, like, my number one word for my company is impact. And if we can make a positive impact and do what we're loving every single day, money's going to follow. It always does. And success breeds what you're passionate about, and so that's really how we've come about and shifted throughout the years as I stopped listening to what was popular and doing what I thought was right.
That's right. It's all about being authentic, being yourself, doing what you believe in, and it's congratulations to you. Congratulations on the business and on the book. You can buy it on Amazon. What's it called again?
Money Bitch.
Okay. I appreciate you, Nicholle Overkamp, founder, CEO of Wilcox Financial Group. And if you want to see, if you're listening on your favorite podcast, you could, however you download your podcast, you could also go to YouTube, or you can go to our website for any of, for this particular podcast or any of our previous podcasts, shovelthesidewalk.com. So until next time, that's it for Sidewalk Talk. I'm Steve Fortunato. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.